Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Dennis Stockman, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is leading aircraft woman Lisa Russell. We warmly welcome the family of Lieutenant Harry Wraith Downs, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During the ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. Please stand and join in singing the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that would help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Lieutenant Harry Wraith Downs. Harry Downs was born on the 31st of March in 1918 in Boulder, Western Australia, the eldest of 3 children born to James and Ethel Downs. Described as a brilliant and serious-minded young man, Harry was known by his family as Digger, often shortened to Dig. This nickname was given in honour of the Australian diggers of the First World War, including a member of Harry's extended family who was killed on Gallipoli, and his uncle Harry, who was fighting on the Western Front when Harry Downs was born. Downs' great passion in life was architecture. As soon as he could sit up in a high chair, he showed a great interest in drawing. At the age of 14, while attending Collie Junior High School in the southwest of Western Australia, he won an architectural drawing competition held by the local RSL. Just before his 18th birthday, he began training and working with a prominent architectural firm in Perth, and while there attended Perth Technical School. Downs passed his certificate for the Architectural Institute at Crawley University at a young age. In 1937, he won the prestigious Eustace Cohen Bronze Medal of the West Australian Institute of Architects and passed his exams to become a registered architect before his 21st birthday. He was a keen sportsman and musician and had a sweetheart named Phyllis. In 1938, Downs signed up to serve as a volunteer in the Royal Australian Engineers. He served in the 13th Field Company and swiftly rose through the ranks. In January 1941, he transferred to the Seven Works and Park Company with the rank of lieutenant. Later that year, he formally joined the AIF and began training with reinforcements for the 2nd 6th Field Park Company, providing logistical support for troops in the field. All 3 of the Downs siblings served for Australia in the Second World War. Harry's sister Margaret served in a voluntary aid detachment and the Australian Women's Auxiliary Service. His brother Jim served in the Royal Australian Navy. On the 15th of January 1942, Harry Wraith Downs embarked with his unit for Singapore. A month later, Singapore fell to the Japanese forces and, like thousands of Allied soldiers, Downs was taken prisoner, sent to Changi Prisoner of War Camp. In April 1943, Japanese authorities attached Downs to a labour group known as F-Force, consisting of British and Australian prisoners of war sent to work on the notorious Burma-Thailand Railway. Conditions for prisoners were extremely harsh. The men were overworked, underfed, and treated poorly. Disease and malnutrition were rife. Excerpts of Downs' diary from when he was a prisoner of war survive to this day. Carried back to Australia by his assistant Noel Helmrich. In a series of entries dated from early May to early July 1943, Downs wrote of a harrowing experience of life on the Thai-Burma Railway. Downs wrote of the harrowing experience of his life as a prisoner of war in his diary, of marching for tens of miles every night in steep tropical terrain with very little food, of dreaming for a good meal, and that hell would be a pleasure resort compared to where he was. Eventually, poor diet, constant marching, and the inhospitable conditions took their toll, and Downs was taken to a camp hospital in Naik in Thailand. On the night of the 23rd of July 1943, he was reported to be suffering from the symptoms of cerebral malaria, which rendered him delirious. Despite being administered sedatives and being looked after by fellow patients, at some point during the night, he escaped from the hospital into the thick jungle. A number of search parties sent around the camp were unable to find him, and it was impossible to follow his tracks on account of the heavy rain. In his delirium, Downs had walked towards the swollen River Kwai. A few days later, his body was found at Tamaram Pant, over 50 kilometres downstream. An attempt was made to retrieve his body, but it floated away and was never seen again. His family did not receive the confirmation of his death until 1945. Upon hearing of his fate, many of his friends and relatives left messages in local newspapers in tribute to their great pal. One British officer who was his friend in the service later wrote, "He certainly had a lot of courage. All the officers and men in the camp were shocked by his death, and he was highly respected by everybody. Harry was a brave and unselfish officer, and I was proud to know him." Harry Downs was 25 years old. His name is listed on the Singapore Memorial, which records the names of over 24,000 servicemen of the Second World War who have no known grave. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His portrait is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lieutenant Harry Wraith Downs, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the last post, reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them. lest we forget. We'll leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia, they'll be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. Thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial, and good evening.